Good times, greatest hits. Good morning and welcome to the Brightside. She is quite the powerhouse, Janet Jackson, together again. And talking about powerhouses, we've got one right here in the studio. Joining us this morning is Mette Johansson, who is the founder of KeyNote Women Speakers. Good morning and welcome, Mette. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, with International Women's Day right around the corner, an interesting dichotomy arises. While it is an opportunity to put gender equality in the spotlight, there also needs to be more tangible, sustainable outcomes such that IWD becomes more than just a day or a month.
Ooh,
yeah,
true.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we want to kind of get started, Mette, because you've stated that you have kind of mixed feelings about International Women's Day. Tell us a bit more about that. Why you feel conflicted about it?
I'm not very happy when people say International Women's Day, happy International Women's Day, because there's not so much to be happy about when we've had the same conversations year after year after year after year. It's been decades now since I entered the workforce, which is decades ago. We had the same conversations about should we have quotas, should we not have quotas. We're still on that level, should we have quotas or not. Why isn't it that there's more action behind it? So that's what I'm frustrated about, that why aren't we advancing more? Yesterday I was talking about this topic to 11 Chamber of Commerces from Europe here in Singapore, and there was also one guy in the room who afterwards said, why are we having this conversation?
Yeah.
Why aren't we all speaking up more about it? Well, it's good that we have this one guy saying it. The fact is, it's very difficult to get men excited about the topic. It is the same women talking about it over and over again. Well, the group does grow a little bit, but it would be good if we could get everybody on board and not just having the conversation, but also taking the right action.
We need to get in touch with their mothers, their mother-in-laws, and their wives, and all the women in their life, and just say like, hey, don't you think that he should be having this conversation?
Maybe that would be a good way to preface things, you know? Imagine this were your mom or your sister. Would you not want to see progress for them?
Yes, pull on the heartstrings. I want to ask this, in the end, do you feel like, IWD, International Women's Day, and other such, diversity measures, are they more sort of like a tokenistic gesture? Why are we still in this sort of position today in 2024?
I don't think it is a token thing, because the people who are arranging International Women's Day, they're really they're doing it out of a good place. They want to have diversity. They want to have inclusion. Very often what's wrong about it is that they invite people on the panel whose main criteria for coming on the panel is they're a woman. Right. Now, it is a little bit like that conversation about asking your dentist for a problem you have with your car. Yes, the dentist might drive a car, but that's not, exactly. But it's not necessarily the best person to ask, why is my car making that funny sound? And it's the same with women on the panel. Well, you're a woman, but are you really an expert? And I was on a panel very recently where they had the conversation around, can women work together? This particular person was talking about, well, I hired a whole leadership team of women and it didn't work out. Well, that is one experience.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of leadership intervention. I'm a consultant, I'm a trainer, I'm a facilitator, coach, and I work a lot with leadership teams who cannot work together. And they are all genders, they are any mix of genders. The truth is, it's hard to work with people. So don't
it's
take
not
that
a gender
one
thing.
Exactly, it's not a gender thing. So let's not have that truth on stage saying, well, women cannot work together because of one proof that has nothing to do with it. It could be so many other reasons. Like for instance, the person is a bad boss to start with, but also they're high-performing individuals who don't know how to collaborate. You need to focus more on creating that environment where people can collaborate. So that is one of the things on International Women's Day. I wish that we're getting more people on stage who are speaking from a point of research, of facts, and not just one experience.
One
that
emotional
person has.
experience, perhaps.
Exactly.
Wow, you raised some very good points there, Mette. Now, do join the conversation. We are live on Facebook this morning at facebook.com/1FM913. Any questions, drop us your question as a comment or send them through via WhatsApp 88550913. Back with more of Mette Johansson in just a bit. morning, everybody, and welcome to Facebook. This is the beautiful Mette joining us this morning. She's the founder of KeyNote Women Speakers. Can you actually tell us a little bit more about what you do at KeyNote, Mette?
We started KeyNote Women Speakers 6 years ago, and we're on a mission to bring more diversity to speaking stages. It all started over 6 years ago. I was invited to speak at a conference and I was rejected. Well, I was not invited to speak at the conference. I was pitching to speak at that conference and I was rejected.
Okay.
And
do you know why?
Yes, because my topic was too feminine, I think, for the topic.
Wow.
It was a wealth conference and all of the speakers were about how do you make money? How do you get rich? My speaking topic was about why do you want to get rich? Because I know, everybody knows that if you know your why, you're focusing much more on
your
getting
how.
there.
Yeah.
This was not what the conference wanted. And so I suspect that my topic was too feminine, so
It doesn't
to say.
feel feminine. It's got nothing to do with gender, right? Understanding your motivations.
What
right,
are the other
behind-
reasons
yeah.
for rejecting me? They had 28 speakers at that conference, and there were 2 women. One of them was the MC, and the other one was on the smaller stage at the fringe of the conference.
Oh.
So there is a lot of unconscious bias around it that we do take men more seriously. In fact, a friend of mine around that time, wonderful guy, really like him a lot. And he said, well, in fact, I also prefer listening to guys. And I mean, you don't have to go longer. We're in the radio studio, right? And the BBC in the 70s said that women's voices are not suitable for radio. That was what some of the bosses said in the 70s on the BBC.
Oh, gosh.
And those are the biases that I want to work against. So that's why I started KeyNote Women Speakers. It's really about making sure that women's voices are heard as well. And it's not just for the sake of the women.
Yeah.
We all stand to benefit by
Yeah.
hearing diverse voices.
Correct. Thank you for blazing that trail,
Yeah.
championing this very important cause because,
Yeah.
women have lots to say too. And we approach it from so many different angles or aspects, right?
I mean, I can see that this is still an uphill battle, even up to today. All these set sort of stereotypes, biases. I mean, you have to work through a lot in your course of work, consulting on leadership teams and everything. Yeah.
But Mette, what about your story as a social entrepreneur and how you found your calling in helping others find their purpose and to kind of lead authentically? Tell us about that.
I was in a corporate job 10 years ago. I quit because I had a bit of a midlife crisis. I was sick and tired of doing things that I didn't feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was doing what I really wanted to be doing. I didn't feel like I was adding value. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Right.
I quit and I connected the dots backwards, which really clearly showed that in all the leadership positions where I could support people in being the best version of themselves, professionally, personally, that was when I was fulfilled. That was when I was on fire. I enjoyed what I did. And that, of course, meant that I have to do something in that direction. So I started my business 10 years ago, which is the consulting, training, facilitation, coaching. And then 4 years ago, I was asked whether I would start a list of women speakers because it was within a women's organization where there were some of the senior people, they were asked to speak, couldn't always respond to those requests. So they said, oh, Mette, you're a speaker, why don't you make an Excel sheet? And I was like, well, why keep this Excel sheet internally? Why not make it public, make a directory online?
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. To, yes, make this list online, public to everybody. And we started a training program where we found out that when we are also training women to speak, we are creating some amazing women speakers. Inspirational, goosebumpy inspirational. It is quite easy to get women to speak up when you have the right motivation, the right urge, giving the right nudges. So yeah, that's how it all started. It was about a midlife crisis a decade ago.
Sometimes you need a bit of adversity in your life.
Exactly.
Alrighty, we're going to head back on air and continue this amazing discussion. Thank you so much for being so open with your sharing with us, Mette. We're learning so much from you this morning, actually. All right, join us live on air. And remember, you can drop us your questions once again on Facebook or WhatsApp. to Lewis and the News, Hit to Be Square here on 1FM 91.3. Good times, greatest hits. Good morning to you. Welcome to the Bright Side. Got a burst of sunshine joining us here in the studio this morning in the form of Mette Johansson. She's the founder of KeyNote Women Speakers, which is a non-profit dedicated to helping women finding their voice and bringing more diversity to speaking stages globally.
We did talk a little bit about this on our Facebook Live, but let's touch on it again. Can you share with our audience, what KeyNote Women Speakers is all about, and the mission and the vision?
We are on a mission to bring more diversity to speaking stages. There is a directory online of women who already are accomplished speakers. And one point that really is important to mention is that we don't want to exchange the men who look like me with women who look like me. It really has to be a diverse bunch of speakers with all the different skin colors, ethnicities, beliefs, whatever all those diversity labels is. We are a bunch of very colorful women in lots of different ways.
I love that. Can you share with us some tips and tricks for women to find their voice and confidence?
Now, this is one thing that's very challenging because often women don't feel they fit in, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. And this is because, especially the business world, the powerful world, in whether it's business or politics, it has been created by men for men. Mm-hmm. I went back and had a look at the business books that I studied when I did my MBA. And guess who the authors are?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sure you can guess.
Yeah.
They're all white. They are men. They're able-bodied. They're straight, or at least acting straight. American, right? And how many people fit this demography in the world? Now, nobody in this room does right now. So when those are the people who are deciding this is the gold standard of doing business, of course there's lots of people who feel that that's not really me.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm experiencing all the time, that also with speaker training, also when I work with corporates on developing women leaders, that lots of women don't really feel comfortable about being a leader. They don't see themselves as a leader. And this is, I'm sure, one of the very big reasons why. The same with speaking. We have created a niche or a standard of this is what good speaking is about. Sure. And women can be so amazing speakers because they're much better at embracing that vulnerability of not, the men's vulnerability sometimes is, I used to sleep on the couch. I was totally broke, the couch of my friend, and now I'm a multimillionaire. And if you want to learn from me, run to the back of the room and I'll teach
Pretty
you.
alpha, isn't it?
It is a bit alpha.
Yeah.
And women, when we are doing the training for the speakers, we are sharing with women what they are good at. We have a look at it and say, all right, as a speaker, you're amazingly funny. Build on that. It's not this 10 checkbox thing of this is what you need to do in order to be a good speaker. No, it's building on you. What are you good at as a speaker? And amplifying that. And the combination of amplifying what women are already good at in a safe space where nobody is telling you this is what you have to do as a speaker, and also allowing them to embrace vulnerability, that is what audiences want. The authenticity and the vulnerability.
With Carol, Lavinia, and Shehzad.
Mette, I'm like, how do we get to listen to you? Where do we go to listen to one of your speeches?
Yeah.
I'm speaking at AmCham today at 5 p.m.
Where?
AmCham,
American
American Chamber of
yeah.
Commerce.
Oh, okay. Is that a free-for-all?
Can we just walk in? Will we be
I'm
stopped?
sure I can get you in. It's sold out. It's oversubscribed, but I'm sure that they want
What are you
to
gonna-
have you in.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about my book, which is over here. I'll get you a couple of copies as well afterwards.
Okay. What's it called again?
Narratives, the stories that hold women back at work.
Whoa! I like
Can I
that.
give you a copy right now?
Yes, please. Show us.
There's a bag full.
I love that. Narratives. Give it to me now.
Show to our guests.
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Okay, she's like, where's the camera? Where's the camera?
All right.
Okay, may I touch it, please?
You may touch it. You may touch it. You may have one. I have copies.
The stories,
for
I love that
all of
because
you.
we all grew up with stories. Sometimes these are stories that we listen, we tell ourselves, we believe. Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea for this book? How long did it take you from start to finish to bring this book to light?
It took a little bit longer than I had hoped. It was 4 years. And that's because I'm doing so many different things, running a business, running a non-profit organization, and dividing my time between 2 or 3 different continents. It took about 4 years from idea to publishing, it was published in Singapore end of last year and internationally just here a month ago. And how did I come up with the idea?
Yeah.
It was actually in a workshop with a client where we just discussed, there's so many of these things that we're saying, they have no roots in the truth.
Is that why you've got little dialogue boxes?
Exactly,
on the cover?
exactly. So it's narratives, the stories that hold women back at work.
Oh, and then they form like little faces. Oh, I see it now. They're like dialogue boxes, and then they're faces of people saying things.
There's
Very
lots of
clever.
things you can think into that and see if you want to. I see an elephant here and there as well.
Were there any
The elephant in the room.
Were there any stories, from like putting the book together that you want to share, like unforgettable stories?
I have interviewed a lot
experiences?
of women
Yeah.
and also men for this book, and one of them was absolutely hilarious. So the first narrative I share is women are too emotional. And a chief human resource officer in India who I interviewed, she was like, women too emotional? You should see the boys in the boardroom. And they don't get their way. They will slam their fists on the table. They will jump up. They will shout.
How do you answer a question like that? Women are too emotional.
It depends on the situation, but often a good way of responding to it, and that's exactly what I'm also doing in the book. I am giving arguments and skills to also step up and argue against it. For instance, would you say the same if she were a man?
No, of course
if somebody
not.
says
He's being vulnerable.
exactly. So there are lots of different ways.
But then there's also the opposite. If a woman is too direct, she's being too
Aggressive,
domineering,
yeah.
aggressive, blah blah blah. How do you
That's the
address
narrative. That's the narrative you're talking
Exactly,
about.
exactly.
How do we change that? What are some practical steps?
Step 1, get the book.
Is that in the
That's
book?
the practical step.
It's in the book as well.
Good
Does
advice.
it involve
good narratives.
Does it involve cookies at some point? Give them cookies. Everybody just have some milk and cookies. Calm down. All right, we're going back on air to wrap up this very fascinating topic and chat with Mette Johansson. Thank you so much for joining us here on Facebook this morning, you guys. Wan Alun is saying good morning.
Hey, morning, Alun. Thanks for tuning in.
All righty, hang tight.
Well, a pretty apt song here from En Vogue, Free Your Mind, because we are talking to Mette Johansson here, who is a keynote speaker. She's founded that non-profit organization, and also talking about the narratives around what's sometimes holding women back, or men, frankly, have been part of that. And, I'm sorry about that from behalf of my gender. But I kind of want to ask as well, what about women supporting other women? Is that fair to ask that question as well? How can women better support other women?
Absolutely. The support is so essential. It is about us supporting each other. It is when we are witnessing unfairness in whatever form it may be, it is so important for others to stand up and point it out. Often when we have what we call microaggressions, right? You're just speaking nonsense again. You don't know what we're talking about because you're a woman, or whatever it is, right? If somebody else says, hang on for a second, somebody else stands up, speaks up, that is important. You're sometimes affected yourself emotionally, so that's why it's so important that others point out, this is not fair, hang on. It's not fair to ask Carol to go and grab coffee again just because she's a woman in the meeting room.
Yeah.
Or for you to take minutes just because you're the woman in the room.
You know, if that happens to you, Carol, you just grab coffee for yourself and you come back with, I only grabbed it for myself. Y'all grab your own coffee.
I think the question arises as well when you're in a room and there's management. It's management saying that. And some people are afraid. How do you address that? That's management speaking, you know.
It's very difficult. The more senior people are, the more difficult it is to address it, of course. And that's why if you are a fairly senior person in the room, the most senior person in the room, to speak up against it, that's the most effective. And of course, if it's in a meeting room, I am very much for calling in what I like to describe it in a conversation, not saying that's wrong, that's wrong. It's much more effective if we simply say, hey, hang on, can we say it in a different way? Of course, some people have the personality to really call it out in a fun way or whatever provoking way. The majority of us can't do that. It's better to ask questions of, what did you mean by that? Would you have said the same if she were a man? Softer questions that are not provocative. It's important we have this calling in of conversations. As soon as we start calling out, we will not have conversations anymore. People are too afraid of having those conversations.
Good point.
So
Or you
it's
might
the
just
way
stop.
you do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very,
Even
Very
yes.
practical.
Yeah.
Even yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody who is working with disabilities, and I was afraid of the language I was using. And I was careful about what I was saying. And he said, yeah, I'm the same. I'm also careful about what I'm saying with the women's discussion. And if we're starting to blame each other of this is wrong, that is wrong, we'll not have the conversation. We'll be too scared. And that is bad. So it's calling people into a conversation rather than calling people
out.
I like that.
I love
I
it.
like
It's a
that.
new strategy that
Yeah.
we're learning this morning. Go grab the book, find out more. It's called Narratives, the story that hold women back at work. Is this on sale at bookshops or online?
Yes, all bookshops in Singapore, the
Singapore.
major bookstores in Singapore and online, of course, as well.
Okay.
Might you have like a website or Instagram that people can follow to like learn more, get all these great tips, and
I'm mostly on LinkedIn, Mette Johansson. I should be easy to find. It's also on Google, everywhere, and my website, mettejohansson.com.
And that's spelled
Fantastic.
Mette, Johansson as in Scarlett Johansson.
Exactly.
Oh, you're equally gorgeous. If
more
not
gorgeous, more gorgeous.
All right. Thank you, Mette. Thank you so much for joining us here today and shedding some light on this very important topic.
Thanks,
and
Mette.
of course, happy Women's Day.
Not too long.
Good morning, boys.
Good times.
Greatest hits.
1FM 91.3.